The Brexit negotiations have been going on for some time now, and it seems that the UK still isn't that close to reaching a deal with the EU. The UK and EU can't agree on the terms to any new deal, and time is running out for them to reach an agreement. So we're going to look at what both sides actually want out of a deal. Today we'll be looking at what Theresa May's government want from the deal. And on October 9th, we're releasing a video about the EU's ideal Brexit deal. We may be less than 40 seconds into this video, but you might have noticed an error I've made already. Today we'll be looking at what Theresa May's government want from the deal. Now that's a little misleading, because that's something we're not actually able to discuss at the moment. Theresa May's Conservative Party can't agree on what kind of deal they want. Theresa May's cabinet can't reach an agreement. I'm not even sure Theresa May agrees with herself on Brexit all the time. A lot of the Conservative Party are hoping for a hard Brexit with the EU. Now this is something we've already discussed in another video. There's a link to that in the description. But it's worth running through the implications of a hard Brexit now for some context. Hard Brexit involves the UK leaving all aspects of the EU. This would give the UK government greater levels of control over laws and regulations. No longer would the UK be beholden to EU laws or the rulings of the European Court of Justice. The UK would also be able to gain greater control over their borders, allowing them to limit the flow of goods and people into the UK. Currently, the UK has open borders with the EU, meaning they have very little control over what or who enters the country. Now this is either good or bad depending on how you look at it. The current single market and customs agreements mean that EU countries can't put tariffs on UK goods, meaning that UK businesses can sell to EU customers cheaply and easily. It also means that UK citizens are free to travel to, work in, and even move to other EU nations without needing a visa. If the UK opts for a hard Brexit, all of this goes away. To some, that's a good thing. Leaving the customs union and single market means that the UK can begin putting tariffs on foreign goods to make UK products more competitive, and it also means that the UK can stop the flow of EU migrants. Leaving the single market and customs union would also allow the United Kingdom to start striking their own trade deals with other nations. Currently, all trade deals are made centrally by the EU. If the UK were to have a hard Brexit, they'd lose all of the existing EU trade deals, but they'd be able to begin forging their own custom deals. A hard Brexit could cause issues for Northern Ireland. The current open border between Ireland and Northern Ireland may have to end. If the UK were to leave all elements of the EU, then there would likely need to be a hard border between the two countries. In all likelihood, EU law means that there would have to be a border between the two countries so that goods and people could be checked to ensure that all laws and regulations were being correctly followed. If you want to find out more about the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland post-Brexit, then you can check out the video we made on the topic. While many Conservatives support a hard Brexit, other members of the Conservative Party are looking for a far softer option. These MPs are generally supported by opposition party members. A soft Brexit is in many ways the opposite of a hard Brexit. A softer Brexit would result in the UK staying in the single market and customs union. This would limit the disruption that Brexit will cause to UK citizens and businesses. In a softer Brexit, the UK would continue to have open borders with the EU. The UK likely wouldn't be able to place tariffs on EU goods or limit immigration, and might not even be able to strike their own trade deals. However, they would keep all existing EU trade deals. UK citizens would maintain their rights to travel, work and move to the EU, and businesses could continue smoothly trading with the EU. A softer Brexit would also likely result in the border staying open between Northern Ireland and Ireland. The problem that Theresa May has is for a Brexit deal to be valid, Parliament and the EU have to agree to it. Before she even worries about the EU, May needs to get Parliament to ratify the deal. With such divided opinion, this means that May needs MPs from both sides to agree to her plan. So that's why Theresa May's plan is ultimately a bit of a compromise. Theresa May first proposed her compromise back in July. She discussed it with her cabinet during a meeting at her country home, Chequers, which is why it's often referred to as the Chequers Deal. The white paper is officially called the Future Relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union, but instead I'll be referring to it as the Chequers Deal, as this video is long enough without me repeating the future relationship between the United Kingdom and European Union 50 times. The Chequers Deal aims to find common ground between those supporting hard Brexit and those in favour of a softer Brexit. Trade is one of the most important aspects of Brexit, so it's only natural that trade takes centre stage in the Chequers Deal too. The White Paper proposes that the UK and EU agree to a facilitated customs union. Under this agreement, both the UK and EU would sign up to a common rulebook for the trade of goods between the two. This would mean that the UK-EU relationship would stay reasonably similar to how it currently operates within the single market. This plan would allow for borders to remain open. This should prevent the use of tariffs and the need for a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. This is because if both countries were following the same trade laws, there wouldn't be any need for customs checks or hard borders. However, at the same time, the UK is looking to gain more control over trade, allowing itself to strike trade deals with other countries without the EU's involvement. The Chequers Deal would also see the UK leave the EU's Common Agricultural Policy and Common Fisheries Policy, meaning that the UK would gain control over UK waters and fishing policies. The UK would also stop being subject to the rulings of the European Court of Justice, and disputes between the UK and EU would be settled by a joint committee instead. The Chequers Deal states that it will end free movement, giving the UK back control over how many people enter the country. Therefore, the UK will be able to control who moves to the UK and have greater control over immigration laws. The plan does include a mobility framework, which allows UK and EU citizens to continue travelling to each other's countries, as well as making it easy for them to apply to work and study. The idea is that if the Chequers Plan takes some things from the hard Brexit camp, like control over migration and the ability to make trade deals, then she keeps those MPs happy, while simultaneously taking elements from the soft Brexit camp, like no hard borders and frictionless trade. But is this something that the EU and Parliament actually like? Will it pass? As we discussed earlier, for a deal to come into force, it needs to be agreed by both Parliament and the EU. For Parliament to sign off Theresa's plan, she needs as many MPs' approval as possible. To be more precise, she needs 320 votes in the House of Commons to approve the deal. This seems, how to put it nicely, somewhat unlikely. The Chequers Plan has been criticised from all angles. Instead of keeping everyone happy, the compromise seems to have pleased no one. Former Brexit Secretary David Davis and former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson both stepped down from their cabinet roles after the Chequers meeting. In a controversial article, Johnson criticised the plan, saying that they were like wrapping a suicide vest around the British Constitution. The problem is that those who support hard Brexit think the deal isn't harsh enough. They say that it gives the EU too much control and doesn't allow the UK to gain the complete freedom from the EU that they're looking for. While on the other side, those who support a soft Brexit see the Chequers Deal as going too far. It makes free movement of goods and people more complicated, and importantly doesn't cover the service sector. Services are key to the UK economy, making up a large proportion of the UK's GDP. The proposed common rulebook, which is supposed to make trade easier between the UK and EU, only applies to goods. This is a potential issue for the UK service sector if they want to continue trading freely with the EU. The Prime Minister even acknowledges that the Chequers Plan would mean that the EU and UK wouldn't have the same access to each other's services as currently exist. May claims that leaving services out of the deal is good for the United Kingdom, as it allows the UK to have greater regulatory flexibility. Supporters of a soft Brexit just say that it will make trading services far more difficult for the UK. Theresa May has recently warned rebels within her party that they should back her deal or be prepared for there to be no deal at all. And that's probably not just a scare tactic.
We'll get a good deal. We'll bring that back from the from the EU negotiations and put that to Parliament. I think that the alternative to that will be not having a deal, because I don't think there will be I don't think the negotiations would have that deal, and B, we're leaving on the 29th of March 2019.
Time is running out for the UK Parliament to agree to May's deal, and it certainly doesn't look like there's time for them to develop an entirely new deal if the Chequers Deal isn't ratified. Parliament isn't the only hurdle that the Chequers Deal will face. The EU also needs to sign off on any deals between the UK and EU. For the Chequers Deal, or any other UK-EU deal to take effect, the agreement needs to be backed by a supermajority of EU nations. This means that at least 20 of the 27 states must agree, and these states must represent at least 65% of the EU's population. If the UK were to put forward the current Chequers proposal, this doesn't look likely to happen. A number of EU nations have already objected to the Chequers Plan, saying that the UK is having its cake and eating it. Many EU nations say that the UK is picking all the best bits of EU membership while avoiding contributing to the EU and dealing with the consequences of membership. Partly because of this, the EU's Michel Barnier has already rejected the Chequers Deal. The EU has its own list of requirements for Brexit, and they have very different priorities to Theresa May. That's something we'll discuss in our next video, which will come out on the 9th of October. To be kept up to date with our videos and notified when that video drops, subscribe to this channel.